Spontaneous date night, wifey hubby spontaneous date night. Melton's is a Michelin star restaurant in York. I know it well. Never been there in a limo though. It had been a long tough day at work and all John wanted to do when he got home was to relax in the hot tub with his wife Rebecca and a few drinks then go to bed. Rebecca, on the other hand, had other plans. He knew it the second he stepped inside. She met him at the door dressed to go out. Don't bother taking your coat off. We have a 7 p.m. reservation at Melton's and our ride should be here soon, she told him as she looked out at the street. Is there something I forgot? Why are we going out tonight? What do you mean, our ride? John asked everything at once. No baby, you haven't forgotten anything, nor is there any particular reason for us to go out tonight, and our ride just got here, she said with a smile. John turned to look out the window as a white stretch limo pulled up in front of their building and the driver came to their door. As soon as they were in the limo, Rebecca continued. I was just thinking today about the last year and I realized that it's been a very long time since we did anything special or spontaneous, like this. Move over to that seat, she said to him and pointed to the rear-facing seat. John switched seats and was about to ask why when Rebecca knelt between his legs and reached for his zipper. She looked him in the eye as she took out his stroked him a few times before bending and taking him into her mouth. I love it when you get like this, he sighed as he reached back and pressed the button that raised the glass between them and the driver. Rebecca continued to suck on his while she fondled his balls with one hand as the other disappeared into the folds of her overcoat. John asked, so, does my loving, spontaneous, sexy wife have any other pleasant surprises planned for her husband tonight? Rebecca deep-throated him once more, humming as she came up. His popped out of her mouth. Oh yes, she answered as she returned to her seat, much to John's dismay. That was just the first of many extremely pleasant surprises your loving, spontaneous, sexy, horny wife has in store for her hardworking, charming, extremely sexy husband this evening. And now for surprise number 2, I offer you a choice, lights on or lights out, she continued, lights on or out, huh? Are there any factors to consider? John asked as he examined his wife's exposed leg. Well, let's see. Okay. Factor 1 is that the choice involves my overcoat. Factor 2 is lights on means I perform a portion of this task. Factor 3 is lights out means you get to do it all yourself, she answered as she uncrossed then crossed her legs again. John suddenly understood. Ah, I see. In that case there is no choice to make. It's lights on, easily, he said. Rebecca giggled, that's right. You like to watch, don't you? Well. I'm going to start by untying this belt, she said as she began untying the belt on her coat. Next, I will take care of these buttons. Okay, she said. John only smiled at her. The first button exposed Rebecca's cleavage and a portion of her breasts. He paused a moment before kissing each breast. Then she moved on to the second of the 3 buttons on the coat. This one exposed enough of her torso that the third button was just a formality. As she opened the coat, also exposed was Rebecca's flat stomach, which she considered her greatest achievement next to raising 2 beautiful children. John started at her neck and proceeded to kiss his way down to the third button, leaving no skin untouched. Rebecca then unbuttoned the third button and opened the coat wide. Wait. I want you to remove these with your mouth. No hands. Rebecca purred as she released John's hands and clasped her own behind her head, then scooted her butt forward on the seat, closer to his face. John smiled when she raised her arms, which made her tits rise even higher. He was already extremely horny and the movement of her breasts only added to that heat. He lowered his face to Rebecca's and thought he caught the scent of cherries. He didn't fully understand until he got them between his teeth and pulled. They tasted like cherries too. Rebecca giggled when she saw the expression on his face and it made her breasts jiggle. Edible. Do you like them? She asked. John chuckled. Oh yeah. I like them, but I like what's under them even more, he said. He began eating away at the string on her left hip, then moved over to her right hip. He got so excited he forgot about the no hands rule and reached for Rebecca's breasts with both hands. No, no, no. I said no hands. Now I'm afraid you must sit on them. My hands haven't moved and they won't, she said. John put his hands behind his knees as he knelt to finish off the rest of the cherry panties. He ate away at them until his nose was pressing against Rebecca's. Her, which was usually covered by a neatly trimmed patch of soft hair, was freshly shaven, clean and smooth as a baby's butt. This turned the horny heat in John's belly into a nuclear reactor on overload. Rebecca was apparently affected also, for her was soaking wet. John had hardly touched her yet. He paused for a moment, enjoying the sight of his wife's hairless. He could see that she was turned on. Her lips were swollen and slightly red and her was beginning to poke out from between them. Rebecca was frustrated. Well, what are you waiting for? You're only halfway done and we're only 10 minutes away from Melton's. You have to get a move on because I want to come before we get there, she said. She lifted her butt off the seat and the remaining part of the panties clung to her ass. Now give me some more of that wonderful tongue of yours, she begged. John began to lick and nibble on the inside of her thigh next to her instead. He knew that this made her horny when they started from scratch and he could just imagine what it was doing to her now. And what happens? He began, then switched to the other leg. If you don't come before we get there, he asked. Then just as she was about to answer, it's quite simple, baby. Oh, fuck yes, just like that. Don't stop. Does it taste good? She asked. John stopped what he was doing and stuck his tongue deeply into Rebecca's and out again. Then he kissed her passionately. Delicious, babe. Your taste's sweet, like honey, he said before returning his attention to her. I'm glad it tastes good, but what you're doing feels great. Please don't stop. Right there, baby. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Right there, just like that, keep it up. Rebecca said as she pushed her tighter to John's face. He licked, nibbled, and sucked on her. He alternated between different levels of pressure and speed, reacting to her reactions, taking her to higher and higher levels of pleasure. Soon her breathing became ragged and rough, a sign that she was teetering on the edge of orgasmic bliss. Then when she was only seconds away from her peak, he stopped. What was it that you were saying about something being quite simple? He asked, knowing it would totally blow her concentration. Oh man, don't stop now. I'm so close. Rebecca moaned and thrust her toward John's face once more. When he just dodged it. Frustrated, she answered him. Okay. I was just saying that it is quite simple. I'm so close right now. My is on fire and I want you to put that fire out, please, she begged. Can I use my hands? John asked. As far as I'm concerned you can use anything you want, just make me, she said. John reached for her breasts and tweaked her. She moaned and placed her hands on top of his and pressed even harder. He kissed her again, then turned his attention to her again. He in clitoris until her breathing grew rough again. She let go of his hands and spread her wide as she thrust her against his lips and teeth. He knew this time there was no going back. He simultaneously squeezed and rolled her in his fingers as he sucked strongly on her. She gasped and gripped his head between her legs. He then began on it at the same time. She started to buck against his face, but he didn't miss a beat until she finally relaxed and released his head. She relaxed back against the seat and just sat there with her eyes closed and a satisfied smile on her face. John got off the floor and onto the seat beside her and placed his arm around her shoulders. She moaned and lay her head on his shoulder. Oh baby, she sighed into his neck, that was so good. It was worth the wait. Thank you, she said as she kissed him, tasting her on his lips. My pleasure, ma'am. Anytime. Anytime, he answered with his posh voice. Oh, in that case, every time. Every time, she said, and they burst out laughing. Better put your coat on. I think that's Melton's up there on the right. John said. They both had to hurry to regain their composure before the driver opened their door. John got out first, then Rebecca. She told the driver to be back in 2 hours.